Good morning, third hour. If you haven't already, go ahead and open up your week 5 work. That's, of course, going to tell you what's up. So today's exciting because we get to start a new unit. So today, I'm going to introduce you to Unit 2, which is going to be storytelling. Originally, it was going to be online presentations until I realized in planning it, all the skills that you're going to need in online presentations are previewed in storytelling. So I switched it. I switched it around. So today you can expect that I'll teach you how to end Unit 1 with your summative reflection, and then I'm going to introduce Unit 2 to you. So I'm going to tell you what we're going to be doing for that unit. I'm also going to teach you what storytelling does in the brain today and how to pick a topic. We're going to have 2 conversation practices at the end of the hour, about 3 minutes each, and those are not only to give you more practice in active listening, but to help you think of a topic for your storytelling speech. Tomorrow, you can expect in day 2 that I'm going to go over CTA. So I'll start with a CTA. Then I'm going to give you a lesson on storytelling, 10 techniques that'll help you write and perform. You're going to, instead of taking notes on those, you're going to watch examples of your choosing. I've made you some hyperlinks, and you're going to write how the example fits the technique. So that's what we're doing for this week. So I'm going to switch right meow and show you your handout. And like I said, if you haven't opened it yet, please do. So there's summative and formative grading for this week. Summative is going to be your reflection writing for Unit 1. And I'm going to guide you through that right after this. So that's 10 points for your formative writing, or pardon me, for your summative writing. Your formative work this week is going to be writing on prompts about Unit 2. So what are your first thoughts? And then writing about those conversation prompts. Tomorrow, you'll do the other part of formative, which is writing those identifications for storytelling techniques. So that's the grading this week. I would suggest at this point you have this part up on your iPad. I'm going to show you right meow how to start this. So the first thing I'll have you do at every end unit is talk about your 2 main goals, your goal for the semester and your goal for the next speech. For this kind of writing, it doesn't matter if it's a complete sentence, it just matters about content. So I'll give you an example. Some folks for semester goal and for goals for the next speech have the same thing. So some people write things like, my goal this semester is to be more confident. And for the next speech, I'm going to keep working on that, feeling confident. What strategies do I need? That kind of thing. I'm going to pause right now so you can write on your week 5 handout your semester goal and your goal for the next speech. Next, the handout prompts you to talk about how you did on the state standard for Unit 1. And of course, in a moment here, I'm going to review that standard so you can. Same kind of writing goes here. Worried more about content than about grammatical correctness or completeness. So let's switch over and show you, review with you the standard for Unit 1. You did see this at the beginning and reminded throughout. Let's find that standard for you. So the 2 main goals for Unit 1, according to the state standard, the 2 state standards we were trying to hit are 1, collaborating with peers. So that would be when you were doing those conversation practices. How did it go? How did it go for you working with other people? The other thing on the standard that we're concerned of for Unit 1 is self-reflection. So how well did you do on taking feedback from others, or how well are you doing with this reflection right meow? Okay, so that's Unit 1. I'm going to pause on your handout. You can talk about how you did on Unit 1. And then next, we'll talk about the paragraph. Actually. So the last part of the Unit 1 reflection is a paragraph. As you can well imagine, on the paragraph, it does matter if you have complete sentences, if you've edited it, what have you. This is to be your best writing. So you're going to write that in this space, and then there's a little prompt at the bottom to reread what you wrote and edit. So let's talk to you folks. Let's give you some examples of how you can write your reflective paragraph. And if you haven't finished your speech yet, you can still do the reflection piece. You would just talk about how's it going as far as getting that done. If you're behind, you absolutely can write your reflection on how you're behind, how it happened, and what you're doing to get caught up. So here's one example. I'll go over it with you. So there's three main approaches you can take to this. One, if you're behind, talk about where you're at in the process. Two, you can write about just how you did on performing the introduction speech. Or three, you could talk about the unit itself and the standards. So I'm going to show you those last two in example. So this paragraph is, as you can see, just on the intro speech. So first, for any academic paragraph, I start with a topic sentence that clearly says what I'm talking about, what my topic is. So my introduction speech went better than I thought it would. Boom, topic sentence. Now I need at least 3 sentences supporting or proving that topic sentence. So if I thought it went better, than I thought it would, how so? Explain. So at first I wasn't sure what to write, so I looked at the example. Once I had my draft done, I practiced a little at home to make sure it was long enough. I decided to film mine, and it took a few tries to get the version I wanted because I would get interrupted. And again, you can use this as a model for yours. Finally, for my academic paragraph, I need a conclusion that says what I'm going to do with this information. So I have overall, my introduction speech was a bit quiet. So next time I will work on being more loud and clear. That's one way to approach it. Let's show you the other way and then give you a little bit of time to write this. Okay, so if I choose to talk about the standard and the unit itself, it could go like this. Give you another model. So again, topic sentence to say what my topic is. I learned a lot and believe I met the standard for Unit 1. Then at least 3 sentences explaining or proving that. The standard discusses working collaboratively in a group to promote discussion, and I think all the practices with conversation went well. Even when things were awkward, we worked through it together and helped one another when it came to topics. I learned about active listening and a few anxiety strategies in this unit. I think those will be useful in the future. Then a conclusion. Wrap it up, say what you'll do with it. For Unit 2, I'm going to keep practicing active listening because I thought it was the most useful skill of Unit 1. So at this point, I'm going to pause for a moment so you can either write that paragraph or jot down your ideas for writing that paragraph toward the end of the hour. Go ahead and do that. Next, I'm going to talk with you about what you can expect for Unit 2, so the overview. In other words, you're going to write either one thing you learned about that, or what you think about it, or even an example of what you learned right here at the start. So Unit 2 overview, blank, what I learned. Then I'm going to teach you how storytelling affects the brain. Same thing. You'll write one thing you learned or wondered about or an example. Then how to pick a topic, or you can write your topic ideas if you prefer. And then as promised, we'll end the hour with conversation practice. We'll have two of those, about 3 minutes. I kept the prompts the same because they seemed to work well for you last time. So who you talked with, and then either detail how it went for active listening, or what you think worked or didn't work, or what you talked about. Most of you are doing great with that. Right? So I'm going to go back up here and give you the Unit 2 overview. So here are all the goals and skills for Unit 2. So in other words, this is what we're going to learn and do. So in Unit 2 storytelling, you're going to learn and discuss the characteristics of an engaging story, and you're going to start that part today. You're going to learn how storytelling works in the brain and why it's the growing presentation platform in just about every business, every field. You're going to learn 10 techniques for creating and performing storytelling, and this will be over the next 4 weeks, as I'll show you in a moment. I'm going to continue teaching you anxiety strategies. My goal is to teach you 10 by the end of the semester. So for this unit, we'll do 4 through 6. We'll do change the track, power pose, and then spatial muscle relaxation. That last one, very useful for pain help. We're going to continue to use the strong 30 technique for our drafting and performing. So just like we did last speech. I'm going to teach you, in addition, how to use a thing called signposts in drafting and performing, and I'll be looking for those in your final performance. We're going to continue to use Memory Castle to practice, so I'll review that for you for the speech. And then finally, the end goal is to create your own storytelling presentation. It can either be in person or filmed. You also have the choice of whether or not you want to continue a story you told in speech 1, because many of you aren't on speech team, so you haven't had the chance yet to develop a piece over several performances. I want to give you that option. Our standard for Unit 2 is a writing standard. So I kept it right from the state standards. Here's what you're going to reflect on at the end, is whether or not you were able to produce and publish clear and coherent writing for a purpose. So your purpose will be storytelling, to entertain. Here are the requirements of the speech itself. So the goal is to entertain, like I said. Some folks like to add a life lesson, entirely up to you. Not going to grade you on that. It's also up to you if your story is true or not. Don't grade you on truthiness. Like I said, you can tell the same story you told in speech 1 if you want to develop it. And then your time window is 2 to 5 minutes. I'm going to grade you 30-point summative at the end of the unit. So I'm going to check and see, does your storytelling have good pace? Are you within the 2 to 5 minute window? I'm going to give you 3 points for PV leg. So poise, voice, life, eye contact, and gestures. Each one of those is worth 3. So be active when you perform. And then finally, 10 points for content. Is it in the strong 30 format? And does it have clear underlined signposts? Schedule. So this week is mid-quarter on Friday. Whoop, go back. All right. So I've already talked about what we're doing this week. Next week, I'm going to do anxiety strategy number 4, do some more practices, and I'm going to teach you how to write your rough draft with signposts. So next week, in other words, writing the rough draft. Then it's spring break. Week 7, when you come back from spring break, we'll do anxiety strategy 5 and 6. We'll make the final draft and you'll practice. I've also built in some time in week 7 for you to catch up if you're behind. Week 8, you're going to perform this. Okay, so you're going to perform your storytelling speech. Also, more time built in for you to catch up. I have had the first vaccine, the first shot, So I'll be back to school in week 8 or 9, depending on how that works. And then finally, week 9 is the last week of quarter 3. So that's when we'll do the reflection, just like we're doing today for Unit 1, and we'll start Unit 3, which is online presentations. So that's an overview of how this is going to go. I'm going to pause so you can write that down, and then I'm going to talk about why do storytelling and what does it do in your brain. So, of course, I'm biased. I love storytelling. I think it's one of the best ways to get information out to folks. Science is backing me up. So here are some of the things overall that work better in storytelling than in other formats. And then I'll get specifically into metacognition, thinking about thinking. So first of all, um, lots of responses in the brain from storytelling, more than with other models. And we'll talk more in detail in a moment about why that is. Another great thing about storytelling and why you should consider it whenever you have to give information to people is it is accessible to everybody, regardless of their literacy level. And that's because most cultures hold storytellers and storytelling in high regard. And so most of your audience will have experienced storytelling before. So they already have some familiarity. You don't have to teach them how it works. People know how a story works. These are some of the reasons why storytelling is really growing in marketing and in training for businesses, because people are better able to recall the things they learn in storytelling and they focus in more. So let's talk about why that is. So I gave you this visual, and then every class has a different visual for their Schoology group that involves the brain. So the first thing that's great about storytelling in the brain is a thing called neural coupling right here. Basically, this is where a story activates the more subconscious parts of the brain. And the more you listen to a story, the more you can imagine yourself in it. That's called neural coupling. And it's amazing, especially for therapy, because you can figure out what you would do in a story instead. You can act out quite a few scenarios almost more safely in listening to storytelling. And in telling a story, you're working through things as well. So that's neural coupling. Closely connected to it is a concept called mirroring. This is where a speaker's brain will match up with the audience's wavelengths. Uh, Basically, our brains try to make connections, and storytelling makes those connections fairly easy. Like I said, because we already are familiar with the format, the brain can then focus on making other deeper connections. So that's mirroring. It's more about connections. As far as the brain itself overall during storytelling, most of the parts of the brain light up when it hears a story or when you're telling a story. In other words, storytelling doesn't just engage one part, it engages all your processing. So in English class, you learn that imagery is when a writer appeals to the senses. That is literally true. Meaning, if I'm hearing a story that has a lot of smells in it, my olfactory sense, my smell cortex, if you will, that lights up, it gets engaged, it starts working. And same for all the other senses, hearing, touch, seeing, all of them. They all get a workout when they're hearing a story. As far as, and then the best, in my opinion, the best thing that happens in your brain with storytelling, chemicals. So those of us who don't make chemicals like we should, or our bodies don't produce them right, storytelling is excellent. Here are some of the lovely chemicals that happen when you tell a story or when you hear a story. First off, the brain releases dopamine. When it hears an emotionally charged story, you get dopamine. Dopamine is wonderful in connection with memory and focus. So that's why telling a story gets your audience in faster than telling them facts. And you've seen this happen in history classes, I'm sure. The best history teachers are the ones who get you involved in the story behind the event, the human emotions, rather than, in 1066, the Battle of Hastings. Facts don't mean much to people if they don't have a story to connect it to. Another lovely chemical that your brain releases when you tell a story or hear a story is cortisol. Now, cortisol helps with focus and memory. And if you have too much of it, it's not great, but storytelling helps regulate how much cortisol you release as well. Cortisol is not only connected to focus, it's connected to stress. So storytelling can help not only focus on a topic, it can help you de-stress because those levels get regulated when you hear a story. Another great chemical you get, serotonin. If you tell a story that involves something like nice or cute, serotonin, one of the happier hormones, gets released. And then finally, two of my favorites, oxytocin and endorphins. Those both get released when you tell or hear a story. So endorphins perk up your energy. So many of us get naturally invigorated by stories. And I've definitely seen that over the years in teaching. I didn't used to tell stories in class. And I noticed when I did, it was almost like students were more awake and paying attention. I now know from brain science, they literally were. And then oxytocin, like I mentioned, that is also known as the hug hormone. It helps connect people. So when you have a story or you hear a story where there is some emotion in it, your body releases that emotion or releases that hormone so you can connect better to the person who's talking, and you connect better with yourself. Because like I said, because of neurocoupling and mirroring, you're thinking about how the story applies to you. So storytelling is amazing. In short, it does so many things for the human brain. I'm going to pause so you can write down at least one of those things, either what you think or what you learned or an example on your handout. We'll talk about tips for choosing a topic and conversations next. Tips for choosing a topic. First tip, go with strong life by picking a topic you care about or enjoy. So tell a story you want to tell. If you're stuck, go through your social media. That's a great place to see at a glance what you value. If you got about 20 million pictures of your friends, maybe you want to tell a story about your friends. Your story doesn't have to be life-shattering or dramatic. Sometimes the best stories are the little things in life, getting a pet, meeting a sibling, taking a nice walk. All right? It can be a story from someone else's point of view. If you're not feeling about talking, if you don't want to talk about yourself, talk about someone else. Talk about someone you love or tell their story. You can also take little stories, little anecdotes, and form them around a theme or a topic if you don't have one main narrative. So it could be times I've turned bright red, times I've biffed, that kind of thing, times I've lost my temper. So here I give you a whole list, storytelling speech ideas. So next you'll either write your ideas for your speech or one of the tips I just gave you, and then we'll end with conversations. Pausing so you can write that. I need my phone for this one. All right, so at this point, could you please start signing on to Google Meet, because I want to try and pair you that way. So next we're going to do conversation practices. Same as table topics. I just called them conversation practices because I thought it would be more accurate. Not all of these are from that book, Table Topics. So here are your goals with these. Two main goals: working on your active listening, so showing with your entire body that you are listening to the person, and then giving you some help developing a storytelling topic. Those are the two main goals. Okay, I don't have anyone signed in yet. All right. So your first conversation is going to be storytelling experiences. So you can either talk about all of these prompts or focus on one of them. So, what is your favorite story? You can tell it briefly or summarize the main parts for your conversation partner. Best stories usually have what do you think makes a good story? Getting at the same idea but a different way. I don't like stories where. And then, what do you think are the most important parts of a good story? What makes up a good story? Okay, this is my smaller class. I believe you're the ones who can be in a large group together. So at this point, I'm going to take my face off the mic, time you for 3 minutes, and then we'll move on to the next conversation. So you can either partner up as a big group or in pairs, since you're my smaller class, and go ahead and talk. Conversation one. All right, let's move on to your next practice, your last conversation practice today. And then you'll get some time to finish tasks 1 and 2, start thinking about what you want to do for your speech. So let's give you that. Right. So for your last practice today, up to you if you work with the same people. You have a choice. You can either talk about spring or do wild card. My goal was to get you talking and like I said, give you some possible topics. So you can answer any one of these about spring, any one of these prompts. So what do you dislike about it? Why do you think it's considered a time for romance? What have you? Or if you prefer, you can do wild card. You can make your own topic and converse about it. That could also be an impromptu if you prefer. So 3 minutes on the clock, talking about those things. Go for it. So hopefully that gave you enough time to have a good conversation. 3 minutes is up. You lovelies have the rest of the time to finish writing your task 1 and 2 on that handout. As always, if you need things, I'll be in the meet.